Hello, welcome to my channel. Today, as you saw that we are going to build a chat app. We are going to use React.js and Firebase. Chat app using real update time. So using Firebase, user can connect with each other on different multiple channels. For example, like HTML, CSS, JavaScript, React channels. So people, they can try to chat on different channels privately without being interacted with other people on other channels. At the same time, a user can delete a message. For example, if you tweeted something by mistake and you'd like to delete it, there is a functionality to delete that message. So let's start to dive in and see how to do that. So the first step, you need to create a React app. And I already did that. As you see here, you need to open first your terminal and then just run this command, npx create -react-app, then your app name. And I already did this step. So if this first time to create a React app and you don't know to do that one, I did a video for this. I will leave that video URL down of this video. And also, next step, after creating a React app, you need to navigate inside your directory after being created. And then we need to install these two packages here. First one is Firebase, which we are going to use to can interact with that Firebase functionality. And also we are going to install the second packages here is React-Firebase-Hook. So this will help us to retrieve a Firebase data easily, basically, with the Hooks API. Then after this being installed, then open the code with your favorite editor. So today I'm going to use VS Code just because I'm already inside the directory. So as you see here, I call it chat-app. So when you just say open that VS Code by writing code space dot. So now this is our app here this is our app code being built and created. I can run that just by typing npm start. That will take some second until compile. So that here we are. Let me bring the browser is here. This being now is working our React app. So let's just clean this one and remove all the things that we don't need. And I'm going to split this to two screens here so we can have good space actually to type and see the changes at the same time. Can make this like that. And here we are. So now I can go to this source. I'm going to just delete everything inside here, leave all of this div. I'm going to write just app component, and also I'm going to remove this logo. I'm not going to use it. Save it and also remove it from here, and that's being removed. And as you see here, this is just this app component. So this is our React app being created. The next step, we are going to create a Firebase account for this project. So you need to first log in into your Google account, then try to go to browser and search for Firebase. And Firebase, and hit enter. That will be firebase.google.com. and then hit enter. That will take you to the main page of Firebase here, where you just need to press this get started. And here I already created previous project here, and I'm going to create new one for this demonstration. So just I will press this plus, and then they will ask me what's the project name. I'm going to just call it chat app in this scenario, and you can name it as you would like, and then hit continue. And they asking me if I need to enable Google Analytics. I don't interest in that one. I can disable it and just create a project. That will take some second. Will be soon with you. So that now is being created. I can just press continue. So it will take me to this page where I can start adding or get my config API or code. So I can press here as these three icons. They will show you which project you are going to build. For example, is it going to be for Android or for iOS or for web? So in this scenario, we are going to build a project for web. You need to press this web icon, and then again you need to give it your project name. So still I'm going to call it just chat app, chat-app. And then it will give you an option here also if you'd like to host this project in Firebase. In this scenario, I'm not going to host it here. I will host it later on Heroku. Actually, if you are interested to know how it's being deployed to Heroku, just leave your comment down of this video, so that I can create a video to teach you how to just deploy a React app to Heroku hoster. So then you can press this register app, and this will take some second until finish these steps. And here we are, that's being now built, and I can just press continue to console. So now I'm in the console, so basically I can press this icon here, this setting icons, and go to project settings. And here from project settings, I can scroll down and press this config. So basically we are interested in this data, and this data should be secured, hidden. I'm going just to delete this after this tutorial being recorded, so you will not be accessing this data basically for yourself. Try to be careful with it. So we need to copy this, basically all this object here, and copy this one and go to your project here. Let's inside source create a file called config.js and hit enter. And inside config you can just paste this code. And we also as I mentioned earlier, that we need to install Firebase. We need to import the Firebase. So here where we can accessing Firebase by using this config data and initializing, we are interested actually in three we are interested in three key here. Basically I will just import this code here. So first one, we need to define a reference for our Firebase. This one we are going to use it later on other files. Instead of every time importing this, we are going to just to export it from this file. It will be imported only in one place. And the next two important, that's actually variable here we are interested in. The first one, the auth. So this will allow us to access the user input or the user data after the user being logged in. And the second one, the actual Firebase database. So we can access that by calling just Firebase.Firestore. And also here there is we need to create Firebase initialization. So basically this here, it will be changed. Instead of this, we are going to wrap all of this by this variable, and this variable will be just a callback function. So here we calling the Firebase, and then we calling this message called initialize app, and then that we passing one object as a prompt to this function, as this object has all this key to access our account, basically this Firebase account. So now we created our config, but before go further, because it's not a really secure way to add your credential or insensitive data inside this file, and this will be accessible by public people. So we are going to use something called environment variable. So to use the environment variable in React, you need to create .env file in main directory of your project. And to do that, because I will not be able to create it inside here, just I need to go back to my terminal, and I will open a new window here. So my app on desktop, I need to navigate to desktop first, and then inside chat app, and then hit enter, and inside here just touch, and then your file name will be .env. So this is where we can define our environment variables. So I will just go back again. I have already, as you see here, this is a file being created, but before go further, also we need to access this file only locally. So when you push your code, for example, to GitHub or to any other sources, so basically we're not pushing this code, so we'll keep this code locally, and because it is sensitive, so we don't need to share it with other people. And to avoid that one, and to avoid also get to track like your change for this file, you need to just go to this .get ignore, and after this line here, or after this desk, add new line .env. So here where you can tell get not track this file. So as you see, this now with the color being changed to be gray, so which is mean not being tracked. So we need to define our environment variable. I have already a list of environment variable here. I define them. Let's start by first one here. This is our API key, and to define environment variable in React app, it has to be start with React_app, then your environment variable name. So in this scenario, it's going to be the first one, API key, which is this one here. As you see, we can just copy it from here, we can copy it without the double quotes. We don't need that double quotes. So now I added all our environment variable here, so I need to go back to this config.js. So instead of this value, I'm going to use that environment variable we just created. So now I added all our environment variables. So this is the first step that being done. And next step, before go to start writing our code, also we need to enable Google login and using that with Firebase. So to enable sign in or login with the Google, and we need to come to this icon here where it say authorization, and then press that icon, and it will take you to here, and you need to just press this get started. And from here you need to select this Google and press this to be enabled instead of disabled, and here it will ask you to add your email, so basically we'll be notified for any support, and then save. So this will take some second. Here we are. So that's being enabled now, and now we have our code, and we have this sign in with the Google being enabled. And next one, last step, we need just go to create our cloud database, and to do that, let's just go scroll here, see where is that. It's called Cloud Firebase, this icon. Hit this icon, then we'll open here where we can create that database. So same, you need just press here create database, and it will ask you, give you here an option. For example, if you need to start with the production mode or a test. Let's just start with the test mode, and it will tell you that you can access, write and read only after before 30 days, and then it will be restrict. I'm going to enable this to make it always you can write and read and without having any issue, because we will add some condition later in our client to make sure always there is a user ID or there is a user being logged in, then they can write to our database. So here we need to change this to depending on your location. For example, is it close to you like US, or you are around the US? For example, now I'm in Europe or I'm in UK, so I think Europe is the best one for me. I'm going to select Europe West. So the next one, just enable, press this enable button. So now our database being created, and that's it. So we don't need to do anything then here in this place. Basically we can go back to our app, and now we have this configuration data being added. And next step, let's go to app and let's retrieve some data from our Firebase. And first step that we are going to do, basically we are going to create a login component, so that will allow us to log in and access the user data. So before that, we need first to create this line here, how we can access our user data, and we need to import this first method, which we can access it from Firebase hook, the one that just we installed, just added before this line here. And we need to import this use state, which will be imported just from React Firebase hooks. And now we need also to import this the one that just we created on a config directory, and the one that just we created here, this here, we need to import it here in this directory. And now we have and we have this method that how we can access this user, and we need to add here a condition that where if there is no user, to show a login button, otherwise to show our chat room. And to do that, let's just add a condition here. We can add a inline condition inside this, and we can just add here inside this between these two div. Let's create one new line here where we need to add a new div. This is where we can add our content, and close this div, and inside here we can add the curly bracket, how we can mix JavaScript with the HTML and React. And then we'll make a condition, say if there is a user, try to display, for example, chat room. This is a component that we are going to create, we didn't create yet. Let's call it just chat room, and close that one. Otherwise, if there is a no user, let's display or render a login component. Also, this is a component that we didn't create, just we are going to create login component. and we need to import this. Basically also it will complain about these two components that being is not available. Let's import them. Now we don't have them yet, but as I mentioned, I'm going to create a dummy 2 component for these 2 lines. So let's just create a directory, call it component inside this source, and first then we can create a component inside that directory, components, and inside let's create the first component, which is login.js. And I already have the code here. Basically I will spend the time explain this code instead of just typing to make the video shorter, not too long, and it's already long actually. So here we need to import the first line, the auth, the one that we created, we define inside this config.js, and also this Firebase ref, the one that I mentioned earlier. And then we'll create just very normal React component. Here is starting with the React component name, which is log in this scenario, and then I'm wrapping everything inside with this div, and this div has a class name, it's called login for styling. And inside here we have only one child basically, and this child is a button. This button has onClick handler, and inside this onClick will access this method by accessing this auth.sign in with a prop, and this method will pop up a new window where we can sign in with a Google method. So then inside here we'll call this method to pop up that actual window, which we can just call Firebase ref, new Firebase ref. This will create new instance of that class, and then we accessing this auth, and to access also a Google auth provider, where we can access the user data basically, or credential. And then inside the button itself is displaying this text login with a Google. That is very simple and easy. And the second component is going to be chat rooms. So let's just create new file, call it ChatRoom room.js, and hit enter. And inside here I'm going to create very dummy React component. So it will be just called ChatRoom component. I'm going to display here chat room text, and that it. So I'm going to remove this import because I'm using React 17. I don't need to import React. And when you adding in your environment variable, you need to restart your application so you can access this environment variable. So that's why we having the error here. We can't show anything on this browser, and also we have this console log error here. So let's go back to our terminal and try just to stop the app and run it again. From here you can terminate this one process and run it again just by npm start. This will take some second until compile finish. Let's check that and see that should be fixing it. That it basically, as you see here, we have this login button. So it will check the first step. If we go back to this app.js, it will check first, check here if there is a user, it will show chat room, otherwise it will show login component. And if you see in the console log, the user console log is already saying null, there is no user. This console log is being print here is null. And now we can clear this one. And so next step, we need to when you press this one to allow us to show login with a Google module. So if we press this one, this will take us to new screen here where it will try to populate a new page here where it will tell me I can sign in with the one of this account. I can sign with this account, Google account. Then now I have the user credential, as you see that being displaying chat room component. If I open the console log again and try see here, if I open this, as you see, this is the user credential, and from here I can access the user basically data. For example, we are going to use this UID, or UID. So this is the one we are going to use it later, and also we are going to use photo image. And as a part here, this one here, we are going to use this photo image. So we are interested in these two data from this user. So now we have the user data. This is very good step. So next step, let's just using this user data to actually create a form, and then we can start adding new data to our database, our new messages to our database. So now we created this chat room component. It's very dummy here and it's empty. We are going to update this chat room component with some data here. We'll start first by defining to access, for example, we are interested to access messages. So we are going to create a message API. Will be, for example, if I'm going to define, say, for example, messages. If this is just imagine this is a variable, let's call it cost. And this messages is going to be an array. And inside this array is going to be list of messages or will be list of object. And this object will be have multiple keys. The first key is going to be UID, the one that just you saw, the one that we are going to get from the user credential or Google credential data. And the second one is going to be foo2 URL. Also, we are going to access it from user credential or Google credential data, foo2 URL. And that the third one is going to be, we are going to create also create it as date. So basically we are going to add a date, so we can then later using this to query the data created, for example, for related date, and then we can also use it for deleting specific messages. For example, created at this is third key, and next key is going to be the actual message itself, which will be just text. And this next key and the last key, it will be room. Basically, we are going to have a multiple room. So we need when the user saves the data, or when the user adding a message, for example, we need to save that message with the related room name. For example, in this scenario, we just call cold room. So we are going to add these 5 keys here, and this is what we are going to build our database data structure to be look like this one. And to do that, first let's use a method here basically to add a new data, and we need to define first our collection. So the collection we are going to add to our database is going to call messages. So first to do that, we need to call our db.collection, then the collection name. Let me import this db, basically the one that we created on config file, config.js. Let's add new line before this function. And let's open this one. If you go back again here, as you see in config, we created this db. And if you go back to chat room, we have this db. We are accessing db.collection messages. This is how we can create a collection. And then next step, we need to create a method that how we can add new messages basically. And before adding a message, basically we need to create a form to allow the user to enter that data basically. And to create that one, I have already a form here. I will populate it inside this div. And before adding that form, I'm going to add a class here for styling later, class name, and this will be called messages. And then inside here, I'm going to add this form. And this form is going to have onSubmit, and onSubmit is going to call this function. I'm going to create this function basically, and inside this form we have very simple just text area input here and button. Very simple. The only 2 child. First child will be text area, and the second one will be a button. And this text area, it has a value. It will be the actual message that the user will enter, and will create initial state for that message. For that message basically, when user will update it, will be also update the data that we have, or the initial state for this message. And also it will have on change handler, so this will be targeting this value. When the value being updated, will update the message default value. For example, let me just create that to make it more easier for you. We need to define a state for our message basically, and to define that we need to create a state. So basically here, and before this line, let's create a new line here. This is how we can create a state on React. We need to first to call the state name, and then this state function to set this state itself, and we assign it to this use state. And use state, we need to import it from React. Let me just do that here before this line. Let's import it from React. For now, just I'm interested in that. Let me move this. So now we imported user state and we created initial state for this message. It will be empty string, and this will be the initial value. When the user updating this initial value, will call this set message handler, which will updating the message value with the new value that being entered to this text area. And then after the user adding this text, then press this button. When pressing this button, because it's a button type submit, we will call this on submit, and on submit will call this function. Let's create this function called handle submit, const handle submit, and inside this handle submit, so then we can send the data to Firebase. And to do that, how we can send this data, basically we need to create a method that will allow us to do this. Basically, let me copy a function that I have it already here. So let's do add here, need to add async, because this will be synchronous call, so we need to use async await, so that we can wait until this being finished, then we can go to next step. So here we'll access this method. Here we define this variable. This is our collection. Then we'll use this method dot add. This is how we can add the data to a collection in Firebase. Then we are passing an object with our entities. So basically you will be having these 5 entities, that the one I defined here at the top. So now I can remove this one. I just defined this earlier to explain how the data structure will be look like. And now this is how we can passing this new data. But also the question how we can get this UID and photo URL and created ad and text, and this will be the message as I mentioned earlier, and also this room. So the message, the message that we defined here at the top, and this created current room. So this current room will be passed as a props to this function, and it will be passed from app.js, and I'm going to create this just after I explain this 3 of this. These 2 of these, we are going to get them from the user, basically data. After the user being signed in with the Google, then we can access this to method basically. And how we can access that? By accessing this variable here. If I add this new line, and by accessing this auth.currentUser, this is a message that will be available inside this auth, and that will return an object, and that object has this 2 key. We can just destructuring that by this way. And the last value here, created ad, how we can access created ad. So on Firebase, there is a method we can access to create this variable. Basically here, this is a message that we can use this Firebase ref, and then we access this Firestore field value. Then we'll use this server timestamp method. So this will create a date, so the one that is compatible with the Firebase. Then we can assign it here. So now we have that all our entities we are looking for. So the one that is not available now, the room itself, let's define that at here app.js. Let's create a new state for current room, and to do that here, just let's add new line here. This is just a state for current room, will be the current room and set current room function, and we are using use state here to define our initial state will be general. So the default room it will be, or the default current room it will be general. So this here it will complain about use state. Let's import the use state is not available. Let's import it after this line, and I'm interested only in use state at the moment. So now I can pass this current room as a props to ChatRoom here. I can add this one more new props to this line, and this is how we can add a props to component. And now I have this initial room or initial current room is general, and later I'm going to add this can pass this functionality, so I can update this general to different room. Basically we are going to have around 4 different rooms, JavaScript, HTML, CSS, and React, and general. So actually 5 rooms instead of 1. So now just let's use just this general as a default, and later we'll update it. So if we go back to this chat room component, so by calling this event, so this function it will pass an event, and it can call prevent default. This will prevent that browser behavior. And now if I try to add a message again, let's see, hello. if I just say hi and then press send, nothing should be happening, shouldn't reload. That's now is preventing the default behavior. And this is the user data basically. And if I just go back here and try to reload again, let's see, it's still woohoo, that's now we have this first data being added, just hi. So if now again I went and try added new data, for example, let's say hello hello world, again, let's see if that will work. Press send and go back again here. As you see, is now being added. So now we added the data to our database. That was really good. So next step, we need, for example, when adding this data, we need to empty, for example, after press this send, I need to empty this input. And to do that, I can call this set message and add new line here and set it to be empty. And that it basically. And as I mentioned earlier, we call this set message here to update the text or to update this message by new values that being entered to this text area. And now if I try to add, for example, new data here, for example, if you say this insert message and then just press send, woohoo, now that's empty, the text area is empty. And if I go back again, now we should have 4, or if I try to press different one, let's see if, yeah, this is the third message. So now we have this third message, and now we, after press send button, it will empty this text area. So the next step, we need to use this data, basically, we need to populate this data in our React app. And to access that, we need to call another method that how we can define our query. We need to define first a query here. If we go before or after this here message ref, add new line, here we'll define a query, how we can query data from this collection. We need to query data just from this collection. First we'll call the collection itself, then dot where, this is how we can query the, for example, the data, where the room equal to the current room, because we are interested in data first to be to related room. The second query is, so we need to order this new messages by created out by the date. Basically, the latest messages will be displayed at the bottom, and we need to limit only to return the 20, the latest 20 messages. We don't need to return all of the messages. And that's the query. Now we define our query. So next step, we need to call a method that I just mentioned earlier, that when we installed React Firebase hook. So it's really good method that we can use to retrieve a data from Firebase by calling this method, which we need to import it from React Firebase hook. Let me just import that here. So it's from this one here. This method will allow us to access the Firebase data by defining this will be the value of that call, which will be here. Just you can call it everything basically, but for now this will make sense. We call it messages because we're retrieving a data for messages or for messages collection by calling this here query. Actually, we need to replace this line after the query, or the space after this query, and then calling that. Then this collection will expect 2 prompts basically. The first prompt will be your query, for example, and the second prompt here, for example, what data else we need to get from this collection here. Basically, this is a collection and this is a document. For example, we are interested in this document ID. We can use this document ID later to delete, for example, a document. And to do that one, by this method, we need to say ID field equal to ID, return ID field that equal to ID. So this will return this document ID. And you can actually find all of this in React Firebase hook documentation. I found all of this from there, and the same as everything for also Firebase functionality or API, how to use this query, and also how to add that, for example, here using this API method. All this is just in Firebase documentation, and also here on this React Firebase hook documentation. So now we define this method, and this is how we can access the messages. Let's console log these messages. That is basically that's very simple. It is, you can console log and messages it's themselves, and go back to our app and try open the console log. Unfortunately, that's saying messages undefined. Let's see what else we missed here. So by default, Firebase, it will not allow you to add this multiple query, and to make them work, this multiple query, we need to go back to our Firebase dashboard here and add something called indexes. See this area here. So this here where we can add our indexes. Just we can press this create index, and here you need to define your collection name or collection ID. In this scenario, it's going to be messages. And after defining that, then you need to define the field that you need to query. For example, we are going to create it at, and we are going to leave this one by default, and the second one is going to be also room. And then we need to define here what is it going to be the query scope for. It will be for collection, and then we need to press this create index. So this, as you see here, the status is pending. I will just back after this finish. So now that, as you see, is finished, as the saying is enabled. So now we can query actually our data. I can go just navigate back again to this data section, and if I go back to our app and then try to reload, we should get back our data basically. So now after enable this indexes, still is not retrieving the data with this query. So for now, I'm going only to use just room query, and later on we'll come back to this and see what's the exact issue basically, to just continue on process, and that will enable us to access actually the messages data. So now here where we can see this messages data. So now we have the messages, basically messages data here, this console log, as you see. Now we accessing the messages data. So we need to display these messages on the screen basically after getting them. So to display them, we need first to create messages card. So the card that will be displaying this list of messages inside this component here. So first, let me create that component. Inside this components, let's create another file, call it MessageCard.js, and inside here, this message card is going to be a simple component that I'm going just to bring the code of it, and I will start explain it line by line. So inside here, we just importing this use state from React and use from config.js file that we created, and I'm defining here a function or a component called message card. It will expect two param. First param will be the message, the one that we are going to display, and second param, it will be handle delete. So for now, we are not going to delete anything. I will just disable this, and also I'm going to disable this line here, so we'll enable it later. So just to make it more simpler to explain this. And also here inside from the message, I'm destructuring this data. I'm interested in the text, UID, and footer URL. And after getting this data, I'm checking here to make a condition to see if this data is getting it from the person that's sending this data, or this message from another person that's responding to my message. By accessing this, I can define a class to just apply different styling for each message, the message for the sender and the message from the receiver. And that now I can define this class, and then here I'm defining inside this parent, this will be just a div. I'm adding this a class. By default, will apply message style for all cards, but then we'll apply a specific styling for sender and different styling for the receiver. You are going to notice that later after I add the CSS. And inside here, I'm adding this first child here, or this first child, which will be the content, and having this class, as you see here, contents, to just apply CSS. And this also has on handler. Basically, when you press on this content, will toggle out the action button, the one that just here I disabled, and to allow you to, for example, delete a message, for example. And this one will handle this function, call this onClick, and this onClick will call this toggle card. And the toggle card, which is here just to switch this state. This state by default, it will be false, which is called show action buttons. By default will be false. I'm using this show icon buttons here to make a condition. I'm adding align style to this button or to this action section to show the action content or to hide them. So basically by default the display will be none. It will check if show actions button is true. It will disable to show the action buttons, otherwise it will hide them. That how this state is doing basically, and this on click handler it will do. And next one here inside this child, I'm adding this first child to display the name of the user. Basically I'm hard coding this one. I'm going to change it. Actually I forgot to change this one. I'm going to change it later, and I can debug that actually later the user here. And next child is going to be the photo. Basically we'll have a wrapper here called a div with the class name called photo, and then inside here we're displaying this image with the user URL with the user photo URL. And here in this one will be the fallback image, so we don't need this one because by default I'm adding a background to this one. If there is no image URL, it will apply just a background color. And the third child here we have also the text, the message text, the important one. So just will have a parent. That parent has a class called text, and inside here I'm displaying the text that we receive for the message. And last one is, as I mentioned, just is the actions area or the actions button. And that is basically we have two state here. The first state to show and hide the action buttons, and only first state actually, and then the props, the message that we get it as a props to display it. The first one will be the username, second one will be the user image, and the third one will be the actual message text. So now we created this component. We need to import it inside this chat room. Let's go back to chat room and just import this component we created, call it message card. Go back to chat room, import at the top here, import message card from /, because in the same directory will be message card. And then inside here at the bottom on the return we need to add this object here. We need to add this map function, and after this div, inside this div basically we need to add here, we can open a curly bracket. This is how we can, as I mentioned, to mix JavaScript with the HTML and React. We need to open this curly bracket, then we check if there is a message, these messages. If there is a messages, then try to map over all of these messages, and for each message we are going to display a card, and this card will pass through this first props, this message as a props, and the second one will be the key, this for React rendering performance, and the third one will be this function we'll call handle delete, and then we'll pass this handle delete function. So we didn't create this one. I'm going just to disable that for now, but by comment out this line. And now we are interested only on this two. And as you see here that now we have 3 messages being rendered with the text and with the username and also a user image. Basically this is my channel logo that or my account image. So now we need, instead of before go further, just let me change this from hard-coded name to be the actual name for this user. If I go back to app.js here, and as already here we have the user here basically. Let me add that inside the curly brace so I can differentiate it. Here we are, this is the user, and I can open this. Let me just debug and look for the username. As you see here, display name, it's called display name. I can go back again to this chat room, and inside this chat room, as you see here, I'm passing the message, and this message doesn't have that user. Basically I need to access the users. This here how we can access the current user. We can access from auth. We need to import this auth, then we can access the current user. Basically you can go back to this message card, let me import it at the top here, and we are interested only on auth, and remove this one, and let me go back here again. I can just use this method to access the current user, and if I back again here, can define just before this line const. So this will be like this user equal this will be current user, but we are not interested in this variable. We're interested in the this here is called display name key. So only this one, we don't interested in other keys. This is how we can destructuring this key, and instead of hard-coded, now we can display the actual username basically. If we log with a different account, we can access that. If I save it, and this one is complaining because it's imported twice. Let me just remove that one. So that is still Muhammad Doan because that's my account name, but if I log in with a different account later, then you can see different account name. And why later? Let me just try to open different browser here. For example, if I try to open Firefox, for example, because it has different local storage. For example, if we go to this local host 3000, this is where the app being rendered. Hit enter, and as this is just showing this login with the Google. If I press this one, it will open this here window, and I can select this different account. It seems going to show the same name because with the also same no, that's not same actually. As you see here saying doing a tick in Arabic. This is the second channel doing a tick in Arabic, and because I didn't add any message, so I'm not going to see that new user. So basically, let me add new message here. Hello from here, new user, and press send. Here we are. We have this new message from this new person here. Basically, it's saying there's new person called doing a tick in Arabic, and the message say hello from new user. So now we have two new user, and one user with each user with a different picture, with a different name, and with a different message. We can contribute all of us together. Now I can enable this button again, so I can toggle this one to be hidden and shown, and I need to pass this handle delete function as a props. So this handle delete function, it will come from this chat room, as I mentioned earlier. Let me just bring that, which is simple function that how we can delete a record basically. Inside here is the handle delete function, and I need to pass it as a props down here. As already I have it, I can just enable this line, and this is what it will do. It will expect created at date, and also it will expect ID. So it will go to this collection, this messages collection document matching this ID, delete it. That is very simple. And let's go back to this here, this messages card. Let's see how we're passing this to variable. And if I go back to messages here, as you see, passing this created as, the created as already variable being initialized here, or is being passed to the messages basically. This is a message that being already coming from the API. We access the same message date. So to delete the right message, we need to get the date that created at, and also the document ID. And how we can get the document ID, we can get it also from the message. If you remember earlier that the query we added here at the top, if you see here, this is how we can get the document ID basically. With the document ID, I mean this document ID. If I come back to this data, this one is called document ID. As you see, add document, this is called document ID. So let me go back, and now we have the button. If I save that one, and let's clear this console and reload again, and hopefully we don't have any issue. For example, if I press this area, now it's showing this button that now I can, if I press one, should deleting it. Here we are. So now we can delete and we can get the data. That's really nice, but the UI doesn't look nice until now. That is absolutely fine. So next one, we need to add login or logout component, and to do that one, just let's create a new component inside this directory, call it logout. Logout.js, and inside this logout.js also is very simple component. It doesn't have a lot of code, so I'm going to explain that, don't worry. Let me just remove this line. So here I'm importing this auth from config file, and I'm creating very simple component, a functional component or hook component, you can call it as you would like. And this is called just sign out, and it will expect one prop, and this prop called set show sidebar. And so what is this sign out? It will do the most important part here. First, we check if there is a current user inside this auth object, then display this a button. Basically, first we need to make sure there is a user sign in to show this sign out button. Otherwise, we don't need to show sign out button because we don't have a user sign in. So that's very simple and easy to understand. And inside here, just we're displaying a button, and this button has a class called Logout. So for styling data, we can add a CSS for this. And here I'm adding this handler, on click handler, which calling auth.signout, the function that we can access from this auth. This by Firebase, how you can sign out. And then we're calling this set show sidebar to be false. I'm going actually to disable this for now because it will not make sense. Later I will explain what this will do. If I just save this one, then I need to import this component in the NavBar. And NavBar component we didn't create yet. Let's go and create the NavBar component. So if I come back again here to this components directory and create new file called just navbar.js, and inside navbar.js, let me just bring some code here. If I just add it here, and this will start simply by just getting use state from React and log out the component that just we created from that logout directory component. And this room we didn't create yet. It's a component that we are going to create, so let me just disable that for now. I'm not interested in that. And what I'm doing here, I created just a NavBar component, functional component, and this functional component will expect a user props and also current room props. We have these two props already available in app.js. Here we have the user and we have current room. That's really good point. And the third one, set current room, also set current room, we have it here on app.js. This set current room, we need to pass it later to this NavBar component. So these three props are ready and available. Then I'm defining here a state, the state to show and hide the sidebar. I'm going to change this to be list menu. Actually, instead of sidebar, is going to be list menu because that makes sense. List menu. And this one should be actually show list menu. Show list menu. Show and then list menu. So this, the initial value for show list menu, it will be false. So when calling this function, it will update this one to be true. For example, here on this a button that should be toggle between showing the list menu and hiding it on a small screen. So by default it will be set to false as I mentioned, and I'm using this value, this show list menu. Adding the condition here to change the opacity of this content. For example, this icon, we have two icons here, cross and menu parse icons. Basically the first one, that the opacity will check if show list menu is true, it will hide the opacity for this image, and it will show this one, which is the same, it will do the opposite of this. And the same, if this is false, it will show this and it will hide this one. And just I'm controlling the opacity to show two different images here for this list menu. I will show that just after rendering this navbar on the app component. And before I actually continue explaining the rest, let me just import this first on the app.js and to see the actual change and the one that just I'm talking about. Just after this line, I need to add new line, and here I need to import the navbar component where I can render it, navbar, and then just closing it. So that, as I mentioned earlier, it will expect three props. Let me just add these three props here. The first props, the user, we have it here, and current room and set current rooms. This is two of them, we have them here. And I need to import this component. Basically, just let me duplicate this one and just change it to be this new navbar component. And now I have this navbar component, and as you see here, navbar is not defined. If I save it, let's reload again. Here we are. That is just a browser issue. As this is the icon that I was talking about. This is the menu bar, basically menu bars, and also we should have another menu, cross menu also icon, and we don't see that because I'm setting this condition to be, as you see, to be hidden. If this one is true, it will be 1, otherwise if false, it will be 0, because at the moment it's set to false. If I change it to be true, you will see the second image, the cross, this cross, and if set back to false, it will show the menu bar, the menu bars basically. If I save that one, now we have this new icon, the two icons that the ones that I just was talking about them, and so now this is two images basically to switching between these two icons. And next child here, the actual list menu, the one that I was just talking about. I'm adding here this class to add a style for this an order list, and also I'm adding inline styling here, so where I can show and hide depending on this show list menu. If this show list menu is true, and if this all of them is true, and try just to move it to top by 10 view height, so that means try to show the list menu content. If show list menu is false, or if there is no user, then it will try to hide the list menu. Basically that's how it should be showing and hide the list menu. And then inside here I'm displaying the first one to be logout button, and the next one it will be list of rooms that we can select. For now we don't have rooms, so let's just show logout button. And before go further, I think this is a good time that where we can add the CSS. So I have list of CSS being created here already. As I mentioned earlier, I'm not going to focus a lot on the CSS. I'm going to just remove everything inside .css, and then I'm going to paste them here. Here we are. That's very magically changing the styling. So basically what I'm doing here is like normal CSS, I'm setting margin and padding for everything to be 0, so then I can override them later, and also just changing the app, the whole app itself, changing the app to use the max with 800 and margin 0 auto to bring the content in large screen in the middle. Basically if I go to large screen, basically the issues, all the CSS is not being applied because this, as you see, this is lowercase app class name, and if I go back to this app.js, I need to change this to be also with a lower a or a small a instead of capital A. If I save that one now, now I see this nice background image, and also if I go to larger screen, should move the content to the middle. That's how we use this CSS. If I go back here, when I use like margin 0 auto to bring all the content on the middle of the screen, and color this background size to be covered, so this image to cover all the background and the background image, the image that just you are seeing, and also changing the line height for the all paragraph to be 24. The rest basically is just CSS to make it look like as you see, basically very nice and user friendly. And this is the same that I mentioned earlier for the messages. So for the sender and receiver, or receiver and sender, the opposite. So basically if you see, it will add different background color and also different border radius. And to exactly showing you what I mean here, if I go back to, I'm adding this title so to understand what each section will do. For example, this messages here, so this will be applied for both these messages, and also this for the content, and this for the username. I'm also applying here grid system. Basically, actually this grid, maybe you need to know a little bit about grid. If you see a display grid, so this grid for this, for example, how I align this, the name and this icon and the message itself, just by using grid, display grid, and to display the grid template to be column, and this 3 column basically I'm adding to be auto, and then I'm controlling each item. I'm adding different selection for different items. So the first the name will take from first column until the third column, and the image will take from the fourth column to fourth column, which is 1 column, and then the last, this text here, will take from first until 5 column, which will take the full width at the bottom. This is how you can actually add a grid system, really very powerful and nice to use. And then the rest is just very simple CSS. I don't need to focus a lot on this. So that it basically, if I just go a little bit larger, and still I see there is some issues here because let me reload this one. Still there is a CSS issues here, but I'm going to fix that later, not for now. So now let's just see what we have here. So this is the icon that I was talking about. We have menu bars, and also we have menu cross. When you're clicking this one, will change the menu to be cross, and also will showing this list menu, basically section where we can find the sign out button. So now if we press the sign out, should be taking us to different screen where we should log in again to get to this section. If I press here, that is now I signed out, but that does not look nice because I can't see the sign out styling basically. Let me see what's wrong, why sign out CSS is not working. So basically the issue here because that we forget actually to add a class here. This content here, as I mentioned earlier, will have the parent will be with the class name called app, and then we'll have a NavBar, and this will be the main content, and this main content should has a class name, and this class name should be called content class name. So this will wrap all the content basically to have the full height content. And if I add that one and if I save, then now that should be fixing the height issue. And that here we are. So now we have this nicely background image, and we have on the center or on the middle of the screen we have login with the Google button. If I press this one, should allow us to go to a new pop-up window, and then we can sign in with a Google account. For example, if I choose this account, now it will take me back again to the screen. So now I sign in, and that's really very good successful step. And let's go back. If I just let me remove this console here, and also let me change this one to E6 syntax because we are using E6 syntax. We'll change it from old syntax to use this new format, just auto function. I save it. And now if let's go back to login component, everything is well, and also let's check out the other component, log out component here. If there is anything missing, we need to take this one back. For example, now I can explain what this will do. Basically, if I press this here, this menu now showing this list menu, if I press this button, it will log out, but it will keep the list menu opened. If I now I log in out. If I try to log in again, let's see if that will keep the same behavior or not. As you see, this is the menu. Is it still there? So to prevent this issue, I need, when I log out then log in again, should display or should hiding this menu. And now let me, if I enable this back again, and this name actually is changed to be list set show list menu instead of this sidebar. Let's go back to the NavBar component here and updating that. Let me just have more space here. And if let's see where I'm passing this here, set show list menu. And if I go back to this logout component here, changes with the new function. So this when I press this logout button, it will call this on click. It will fire this on click function, and this will call this function here also sign out, which it will sign me out from Firebase. And then at the same time, I'm calling this function to set the menu or show list menu to be false, so it will hide this menu. If now again try to press sign out and try to press sign out in again, this should be fixing that issue. So we'll not have that bug issue basically anymore. That it now that's being fixed. So that that now should make sense. And one last component that we need to build, the rooms component. So after that we should get everything done. Let's go back to components directory and create new file, call it rooms or room.js. And inside this room is not also going, it actually should be rooms singular. Let's change it with the S, rooms, because we are going to have multiple rooms. And inside these rooms actually we are going to have simple component here. Let me just bring that, and this is a component basically. Let me have more space here, and I'm going to explain that actually line by line. So these rooms I don't need to even import this React. As I mentioned, I'm using React 17. In React 17 you don't need to import it, and this will expect 3 props: current room and set show list menu, not sidebar actually. I'm going to change this also, and set current room. Let me first, before go further, change this one to be this new set show list menu, and here we are. If I just check that one, so now I have these 3 props passed to this function or to this component. And before talk about this, let me go down, and inside here I'm rendering a parent with a class name called room, so I can add the CSS to this one later. And inside this parent I'm rendering the first child, just h2, to display the section name, for example, be called select room, so to tell the user what should be do basically in this area. So to select a room basically will be an ordered list with a list items. So on each list item will be displaying the room name, and also will have on click handler. When pressing this on click handler, will call this handle room change. And what handle room change actually will do, so on handle room change, it will call this set current room. Instead of this general, if I go back to this app.js, instead of this general room name, it will be dynamically updated to related room name. For example, if a user press HTML room, it will change this to be HTML. If press CSS, it will change it to CSS, and the same for React and JavaScript. And so let me just go back to rooms component. Where is it? Here we are. So that what it will do here in this first line, it will change the room, the one that user just selected. And second one, also after the user just select, it will hide the list menu. Basically, we don't need to see that list menu. Basically, I can actually comment out this, and I will show you the behavior before and after. And that it basically. Very simple. Just list an order list with the text to display the room name, and when click on this list item, it will fire this on click, and on click it will fire this handle room change, and on handle room change we're changing the room name. Basically that it. And how we passing these things down, because this room it will be imported in NavBar component. If I go back to this NavBar, if you see we importing this room here at the top. Let me enable that, and then we are rendering that here at the bottom. And if I enable this, I'm passing 3 props here: current room and set current room. Where I'm getting this? I'm getting this as a props, also as from this for this NavBar component, and the NavBar component is getting it from app.js. This is where we are rendering this NavBar. So this is called nested props. So usually it's not good or best practice to use it unless if you have to. In this scenario we have to use it, because we're not going to use another global state API or anything, because it's simple props and also is easy to be understand. So that's now how we pass the 3 props. And the third one also, this set show list menu, which is already defined here, so I'm passing it directly as a props to this component. If now I save this and try to show the list menu, boom, here we are. Now we have select rooms menu here, and with the multiple rooms. As you see, also this is selecting active class by default. If you see, if I go back to rooms here, I'm adding this class. I forgot earlier to actually explain this. And each list item has this class here. It will check if the current room is equal to this list item room. For example, in this scenario will be HTML, here will be CSS. If equal, then try to add active style. What active style will do, basically will change the background to be dark background, which will just make it stand out, and also to notice this is the current room that you are in. At the same time, we are displaying the current room here on the navbar. And I also actually didn't explain this earlier. If I go back to this navbar here, if you see here, the one that, as I mentioned earlier, that would be this, the first one would be the title or the brand, for example. And for example, you can call it brand or the app title, so whatever. So this is where we can display the current room name. So this will this current room, then this will current room name will be dynamically we access it from app.js. So this here we're displaying that as a current room, and then inside the nav bar here at the bottom, we're making a condition. If there is a user to display this list menu, and if there is no user, actually it will not show this icon. It will not show this menu icon, and also it will not show this list menu. If there is a user, then try to show them. Otherwise, this is a condition that where is here displaying none. And this is the one that just I mentioned or I explained earlier, that's the current room, which will be dynamically passed from app.js. This is where we can display the current room here. So to tell the user where you are now or where in which room you are in. So that's how we can pass the dynamic room. And also if we go back to this room.js component, this is how, as I mentioned, to apply active class. If now I selected a class, here should be dynamically changing this current room name. If I select CSS, as you see that CSS change, React.js change, JavaScript change. But if you notice something, I'm selecting but doesn't hide the list menu. So that's not good behavior, and also is not good practice. And to hide that one, we need to call this set show list menu to be false, so that will hide this list menu. If I save it, and if I press again, for example, if I select CSS, now it's selected CSS room and hiding the list menu. And how the list menu being hidden? Because we call this set show list. And what does this will do? Show list. If I go back to this navbar component here, this show list will update this to be false. And when show list menu is false, then it will hide the list menu or unordered list. If I go back here, this inline style, it will check if this is false, it will try to hide it. If true, it will show and leave only this space at the top. If you see this space here is around 10 view height. That it. So this is our rooms component. So now we have all the components. Basically we have only this last component that we are looking for, which is the spanner. Basically, if you notice when we reload here, the behavior first will show the logout button and will showing then the background image. This is not good behavior. We need to show a spanner until a period of time, then show the content after the content being loaded. So I'm going to create just a spanner component inside this directory component. So add a new file, call it spanner.jss. Then hit enter, and inside here I'm going to just bring the spanner code. It's very simple component, and here we are. That it says very simple function or component, functional component, and inside here has first parent div with the class called spanner, and another child with the class called circle, and this label to display a label just called say loading, and also second child which has a class name div with the class name circle child. So this is how later I can add a CSS. So that it basically, and after adding the CSS will make it look really as a spanner. If I just come back to this app.css, so this is a CSS section for the spanner. If you'd like to see more or maybe dig more about it and understand it, very simple and easy and straightforward. And just maybe the important one here is adding these keyframes to add animation to look like a spanner or circling with animated behavior. And that it. So that's the spanner, how we can use it. That's the important things. So basically if you go back to app.js, so basically we have two scenarios: if user log in and user not log in. So that which is make it hard. So the best place to add this spanner, we are going to add it on app.js. And to add it to app.js, let me just import it first. Spanner should import from component here. Now I import it, and also I need to create initial state that for showing the spanner. And the initial state, I'm going to create this loading state. The initial state will be false. I need to, or the initial state will be true. So I need to check if the initial state is true. I should show the spanner, otherwise not showing it. So inside this app, so I'm going to render this spanner. So the spanner, because has a position fixed, and also taking the top index position, so that will be at the top of everything. As you see, it's that on front of you, and if it will check if loading is true, it will show the spinner, otherwise it will hiding it. And as I mentioned, this is because the initial value is true, it will be continuously showing this spinner. But I need to disable this spinner after 2 or 3 seconds, for example. Let's say exactly or precisely after 3 seconds, which will make sure all the content being loaded, or maybe even the user internet it was really slow. Maybe it will take around 2 or 3 seconds, but in most of internet or really fast internet will not take more than 1 second. But I need to make sure everything is being loaded, so 3 seconds for me is good. For you, maybe if you need to make it less, you can make it 2 or 1 or maybe even less than 1. So here it will complain about this use effect because we didn't import it. Let's import this one at the top here. So here we are, we import it. So this is what use effect it will do. It will fire this set time out after 3 seconds. We'll set back again this loading to be false. So we'll call set loading to just to be false instead of true. When it changed to be false, then this one it will be hiding this spinner from the render section. As you see, if I load again, if I reload, it will load for 3 seconds, then it will disappear. That's how we adding the spinner. That should be it. Last things we need to debug here and see why this text area is not inside this menu or this content. So the issue basically, as you see here, the form, I'm adding the form as a child of this message section, where this message section should be independent, and the form should be as a second child for all the content. Basically the content for all of this section should be has 2 childs. The first child where we displaying the text or the messages, as a second child will be this text area input or this form. Basically we need to take this form outside of this this how the CSS structure that I added earlier, outside of this div. Because in React to render content or children inside this return should be wrapped by one parent, we need to wrap all of this by React fragment. Let me just open that and close at the bottom, and that should be fixing the issue. You need just close it at backslash, and that should be saving it. If I now reload, let me reload it again. It's just browser issue. If I just add more screen, here we are. That now is basically inside. So that it basically now we added everything that we should add for the CSS. And this one is normal behavior, this sidebar. Basically, if we can see on the large screen, that's how it look like. And we need also actually go back. If you notice that when adding messages here, if let me add more messages, if I try to add just dummy message here, if you see it's on messages here, and let me add one more message. I need to explain. As you see here, this last message now I need to manually scroll, so I need to allow the user, for example, when add the message, automatically scrolling to the top section, for example to this section, to this area. And to do that one in ChatRoom, basically I need to create a custom ref here. Then I can use that one to scroll here, like to this area. Then I can scroll nicely to this area. I need to go back to ChatRoom here, and then I need to use this variable here called just custom ref. I'm assigning this to this ref. Then I can import this ref from React. And how I can use this ref, I'm going to add inside the render section here, where I can then scroll to this area. For example, if I just go to back here, if I scroll down after this list of messages inside the section here, this is where the messages, and this is the parent for these messages. So this here I can add a ref to this spam, and then when I press this submit button, which where I'm adding the new messages, or when I'm submitting a message to the Firebase, then at the same time it should be scroll to down. Basically after this line, I'm calling this custom ref dot current, which will be the span, which will be here at the bottom. Then scroll in view, basically we'll move the content to the view of the DOM, and the behavior, the scroll behavior, it will be smooth. Basically smoothly will notice the animation or the scrolling animated. Basically, if I now added again new messages, let me just add the dummy things here and press send, you see, do you notice that? Here we are, that's slightly being popped basically. So now if I go to the second browser here, for example, if try to add a new message by the second user here, which will be pumped at here, so that now we can add multiple messages by using different user, and now also we can test different rooms. Basically, if I need to go to HTML room, for example, hello, for example, HTML divs, and then just press send. Here we are, this is the first one that being sent. This is more, and now that's this first, only these two messages on this HTML. If I go back to this and try to select HTML room with a different user here, seems I have some internet issue here, that's why it's not displaying the content basically properly, or the user image. If I go to HTML again here and try to, for example, as you see, this is a second user basically messages, say hello HTML div, this is more, and if I need to reply, say hi more, for example, and send, that's it. So basically that's sending the message. But if you see the order now, if this is the one that earlier that we skipped, the order is now being mixed, we need to fix the order issue. So that is still is not working properly. Let me just go back to Firebase, and I added this earlier. Let me again just remove this, and let if I can get that warning, and dynamically I can create these indexes. If I just reload again here, let's see if we are going to get a console log here or error. If I try to go to, for example, HTML room and try to add any dummy message, nothing is happened. So let's go again, try to add these indexes. So we may miss something. Let's go press this again and create new indexes for messages collection. And the first one gonna be room, and second one is gonna be created at, and then we are going to leave this by default. And first time we selected this collection, which should be for a specific collection, and I'm going to select this one to be just for group of collection, for anything with that to field basically should have these queries. Basically, let's press this create index, and this will take some time until we finish. We'll be back. So now that is finished basically. Let's go back and again try. Let's see if this is fixing the issue. Let's go back to our app and try just reload here and give it some second. Woohoo! Is that it? Basically that's fixing the issue now. And if I try just to select different room now, if I go to HTML, let's see if I added something here and try to add it. Here we are, now we have something in HTML. Hello. Just because I removed the previous text that was added to the database. And one last thing that also we forget to test out, actually to delete a message, if I press this message should toggle out this button. If I press it again, hiding the button, let me press this button and see, boom, that is deleting the message. Basically, if I press it again, that is deleting it. Now deleting functionalities work, and also adding messages for different basically rooms also is work. Basically, hi, for let's say hi React JS devs. If I press send, now that's being sent. If I go to the second room here, let me reload this one, this browser here. If I go with a different user here, if I try select to go to React.js, or is there is a new old user? Is this a new user? Hi Divina, and just press send. The new user adds new message, and that now should be in order also. If you noticed last time we had an issue with the messages order. This say this is nice channel and let's say just press send. I like React.js sent. As you see now, that's being in order. For example, if I go back again to this section here, this React channel, I see this list of messages being added by this user. If try to reply, let's say here, for example, I like it too, and then just set that. Now see this is in order. Say, what do you think about JS? And here we are. So that we have list of messages, then the second user can reply this API issue. Let's go back to this our Firebase rules here. Let's check the rules and see if there is something we need to update. Yeah, see, this here is actually after this period of time will stop you from reading and writing unless this condition is true, which will be exceeded after this period. I need to remove this condition to read and write, because I check on the client. If the user sign in, then it will allow the user to read and write to this database. This how should be updating this read and write rule. Basically, I can publish after changing this line just to allow it to read and write all time. And if I go back again, this should be showing the icon basically to fix the issue. And if I reload and save, let me clear this console. Yeah, it's still that's not working well. Let's see what else. So the issue actually I found it is just about the internet. I'm using multiple devices in the same internet, so that slowed down my internet speed, so that's why the image wasn't displaying properly. And now as you see that the image is being displayed basically. If I now edit messages, that here we are, so with the two different user. And also is this open just accidentally, and need to close this one, terminate this debugging, and I can't. So let's also fix this issue here. I noticed this when, for example, this user, I shouldn't delete other people messages. So I need to check where if this actually related user to show this button or not. And to do that, let's just go back to this this chat message card. So here this is where we're showing this this actions, and here we're relying only if this action is true or show action true or not. But also we need to check where if this related to user by checking this. Let's see, this is already, if the current user, it should be sent. So we need to check also if this is true, and if this is equal to this one, if UID equal to us.current_user.id. So that makes sure if this is the right user, then try to show the delete button too. If I save that one, that should be fixing the issue. So this should be and basically. And if it show action buttons true and the current user related or the current user owing this message, then try to show the delete or the action buttons, otherwise not showing it. So I save that now. If I reload, that should be fine now. So that basically this condition fixing the issue. If I press the second user message, I can't see that button, but if I try to press mine, I can toggle that button and I can delete it basically. Woohoo! Can delete my message, but I can't delete other people's message, and other people cannot delete mine. That's the issue being fixed. Let's just quick review here and see if there is anything missing and we forgot to add. So we said earlier we can add it and now we didn't. It seems everything basically that it, and we added all the functionality, list of room, we can select different rooms, and also use the navigation. And also we can test that earlier I said that when we sign out we shouldn't see this menu icon here, and also here this should be hiding this current room. So let's see if I sign out. So now we sign out, but that's not still showing the current room. Instead of the current room should be just showing your application name. That what it should be showing, and that's what I'm going to fix here. If I go back to NavBar here, I need to check if there is a user, try show this one, otherwise try to show different text. Basically this will be a text. I can wrap this text by this backtick, and inside the backtick here I can add a $sign here where I can render a variable inside the string. I will check if there is a user, show this content, otherwise try to show just for example your project name. In this scenario maybe I can call it just let me add a backtick. It's a strong HTML element inside, then it will be my chat. It will, my app is going to be called just chat app. Chat app, and save it, and that should be fixing it. Let me add more space here, see what's wrong, and here we are. It's checking if, let me close that. Why I didn't close this curly braces. If I save it now, should be it, and if I reload it, that should be after 3 seconds. Instead of showing this HTML, I don't need to see this HTML tag, so I need to see all of this this one here. I can just remove this backtick. I don't need the backtick, and same as here, so I shouldn't have this shouldn't see this backtick, and instead can add it inside here, or the opposite. Basically, actually I need to add the backtick here and close it here, and I don't need it here. Let me just remove that, and let me remove the $sign. This is still complaining about this, and actually to fix this issue we can use React fragment. This will make it easier for us to fix it, and that it basically, that should it. So that fixed the issue, and let me just reload this browser issue, and just reloading it. So that it, now we see our current room that I'm in. If I select different room, for example JavaScript, I'm in JavaScript, say hey JS, that it, send this JS room, and if I sign out, now I see my application name and log in with the Google button. That it, now all the functionality work, and the UI is nice and work across different platform, work on desktop. If I just open this in full screen now, and if you can see that the full screen, and this is how it look on the desktop. For example, if I need to see it on mobile, this is how it look on mobile, and if I need to see it on iPad, for example, this is the iPad. That how is it? So if I just let's fit it on the window, that's how it look on iPad, and I can sign in on iPad, and same with the mobile device, and user friendly, and I can change it to iPhone, and that it basically. One last issue also I noticed here, basically if you see when I need to display a message, basically it will mix the name with the receiver and sender, displaying the same name. And to fix this issue, actually we need to save the username on the database. Basically when a user try to add a message, also we need to add one more field, which will be the username. And username, we can access it from the Google credential, as I just mentioned earlier, by this key here called display name. And let's do that and go to ChatRoom here, this component, and where we adding a data to messages collection. And here let's just add one more key, call it user name, and then that will be just this display name, which we can access it from the user here. We can destructure it, and this is the username, we have it. And if we go back to this chat or message card, now instead of accessing this display name, we can access the username from the message. And let's just add it here, user, and then will be name, Camille Cass, comma, save it. This is the username that we are going to display on the card instead of this display name. So to fix that issue, and we can just remove this from this line and save it. And now that we're not going to display anything because we don't have that username on the database. And then just let's go to delete the messages collection from the database. Go to Firebase and hit enter and go to the account that just we created, and here is called chat app. And on chat app we need to go to this cloud Firebase database, and here just let's delete this collection called messages and go back and delete here. Let's just delete it and reload this page. We should have nothing. Now if we try to sign in, and already I signed in and try to add a message, pop up a message here, try say for example HTML, say hello, and send a message that now is coming as a massive organization. And if I just let me bring another account here just to have a different user that sign in also. I have another user here, so I can have here multiple user. Let's have this in two different screen. So if try to sign here on go the same channel with this different user, which is a HTML or different room here. This room, as already I see this massive organization, say hello, and if I said hello Matthew and then try to press send, now that's me here doing a dot in Arabic, doing a tick in Arabic. So this now is fixing the naming issue. So now we can have the correct name for each user and not have that issue anymore. So that's how we're fixing the issue. Basically that's the end of the video, and thank you for waiting all this long time, and I hope this was easy and you get a benefit from it. And if you are new to my channel, don't forget to press subscribe button and enable the bell to get all new videos and content like this and much better, and to be on the track. And see you on the next video.